Hey, what's up? It's your girl Tati, and I wanted to talk about last night's episode of A&E and WWE Biography Legends of The Undertaker. So it was season 2, episode 1. Honestly, for obvious reasons, I watched this. I tend to not watch something that WWE would produce because they tend to be biased about certain things and certain people. But this was definitely an exception, and I actually really enjoyed that episode. You get to learn a lot of new things that you didn't know before, but 2 hours honestly was just not enough. It was a really great episode. I really wanted them to focus on his early career. Obviously this is going to be more about his WWE career, but we got to hear a lot of different aspects on his life and his career. Obviously he's from Houston, Texas, and in this interview we did get to hear quite a bit from his mom, who stated that she did not like the Undertaker gimmick, and she thought it was scary and just not for his liking. He has 4 other brothers. One of them passed away, and actually passed away a day before his last WrestleMania match. So that must have been really difficult for him to partake in after losing someone so important to him. But he said that he grew up being a fan, and he would on occasion go see other wrestlers perform in Houston with his family. Wrestling was very popular 70s and 80s, and it was just something that he was mesmerized by, and he enjoyed it. But he was actually really interested in playing basketball. So a kid from a local YMCA asked him to join and play basketball because he needed someone to replace him. And since Taker was tall, they asked him to play. And normally just because you're tall doesn't mean that you're actually a good player, but he enjoyed playing basketball and had to really learn how to play well. And his coach and team agreed that he just was too small and he needed to gain weight. So he tried gaining weight by visiting a local buffet as often as he could throughout the week so that he can gain weight. However, it really wasn't working out for him in terms of gaining weight, and the people from the buffet was like, stop coming here, you're eating all the damn food. So he had to stop coming, and he basically felt like he probably would not be able to get as big as he wanted to. His interest for basketball did grow a lot, and he wanted to play college ball. And he was going to sign to play for a team. And days before he were to sign, the coach called him up and said, look, you know, I really want to win this season, and if I want to win, I'm going to have to sign other people. So obviously he was crushed by that, because there were other people who were better players than him that, you know, the coach had to give that opportunity to if they wanted to win some games and win a championship. So he waited a whole year before he can try out for the team again. And what ended up happening is that the school went bankrupt, and he had to find another school to go to and play for another team. Now at this point he was considering, you know, lifting weights and getting bigger and playing overseas. He wanted to have a career playing basketball, you know, going around internationally, traveling and playing different teams around the world or whatnot. So he ends up joining a gym so that he can get much bigger than what he was. And while he was there, there was another person who often go to the gym and would say, hey, we need to check out Buzz Sawyer. He is training people for $2,400 to be wrestlers. It would be cool, let's try it. After some time he ended up convincing Mark to go, and they end up going. So him and a bunch of guys, they end up going to Buzz Sawyer house. When they went there, to their surprise, there's no ring. It's just really a backyard and a front yard to practice on. And basically he was just you know, making them do conditions every day and not really actual training for wrestling. So basically, you know, further down the line, Taker realized, you know, he's just taking everybody's money and hoping that he'll train them in a way where people will be like, fuck this, and just leave. So Taker was actually the very last person out of all the guys that, you know, started the training with him, to show up. And the last day that, well, no, not the last day, the day before the last time he showed up, he actually went to pay Buzz his last installment of payments, which was $1,000. And Taker actually showed that he had that receipt. Basically, he just wrote it on a piece of paper and he signed it stating that, you know, Mark gave him $1,000 for his last payment or whatnot. So he still had that. And interesting enough, he was really excited still, despite everyone else around him being discouraged. So after making that last payment, he shows up again for training, and Buzz is gone. Like, that's it. He probably, I don't want to say he never seen him after that, but as far as him training him, yeah, that was just done. So he knew he was $2,400 down the hole and didn't gain really any experience or anything from working with Buzz. And that was really difficult for him, because situations like that can you know, discourage someone from wanting to be in the business. But he still wanted to be a wrestler, and he told his family that he was going to drop out from college and pursue pro wrestling. And his parents was like, you know what, you on your own. They was really upset because Taker was on track to being the first person in their family to graduate college, and that was really, really important to them. But it was something that he ultimately did not want to pursue. Wrestling was definitely his calling. So he would go out, and for 8 months he would try to get noticed. And one day, Fritz Von Erich, obviously from the Von Erichs, they were hugely popular around this time, and he noticed him. And he noticed him because he looked like his son David, who had passed away some time before that. And he's like, you know, this guy reminds me of David, he looks like him, book him. And someone booked him in a match. So he debuted as Texas Red. Obviously, Mark naturally has red hair, so he just had that look, and based on, you know, the red hair and everything, they call him Texas Red. And what was fascinating about this was two things. His opponent was Bruiser Brody. Oh my gosh, like, not much people can say that they've got a chance to be with someone like Bruiser Brody in the ring. And also, his manager at the time was Percy Pringle, who is, well, ultimately known as Paul Bearer. And it's really, really cool that he got a chance to have his first experience with these two people. Now, what was really, really interesting was that he was green as grass. He didn't have really any experience at all, and he had his first match with someone who is considered to be a legend, who was obviously gone too soon from this world for foolishness that gone on, whatever. That's another story. But that was a great first match to have. It's actually, I don't know if it's still on YouTube. Last time I saw it was like sometime last year. If it's still there, I'll post it down in the somewhere here so you guys can check it out. It was actually pretty interesting to see. And like I said, for it to be his debut match, like, that's freaking awesome. So there was a guy named Steven Simpson who's from South Africa. He told Taker, he said, hey, come with me to South Africa. We can train, we can practice. You'll be able to get some matches in and get some experiences. So Taker goes over there, and they're taking pictures, and he's like coming up with a character for himself. And interesting enough, those pictures that he took, they were all in a graveyard. So it kind of almost foreshadows like where his career is going to take it off to. So he's training in South Africa, and his first match was against the Tiger Singh. Tiger Singh was super popular as well, another legend in the business. And obviously he had a lot of good opponents and experiences with people that other people cannot say they've had experiences with. He just was not in that place in his career where he would be able to show really much of any talent. So he has this match. People in the audience are upset as hell. They're rioting. They're throwing trash and chairs and bottles and everything at him. And he realizes that, you know, people are not giving him the chance. So after about, what, 4 months in South Africa, he goes to Memphis, and he is the master of pain. And I guess that wasn't really working out for him at the time, so he goes back to South Africa, but nobody would book him. And now he's stuck. He doesn't know really where to go from there. And somehow the heavens are listening, and Jerry Lawler calls him and say, hey, come down to Memphis. You know, basically giving him another opportunity. He felt like he had something. If he worked with him, that might come out, whatever that may be. So he comes to Memphis, and he's working with Jerry Lawler, and ultimately have a match with Jerry, and becomes a Mid-South heavyweight champion. And that's a huge opportunity for someone who doesn't have that much experience. So this was based on Jerry just seeing something in him and taking the chance, which is what, you know, a lot of promoters should do. Even when they're not that great, it just worked out for him in that way. So he has an opportunity with WCW, and oh my god. So Sid ends up breaking his ribs, and he punctured his lungs, so he cannot be part of the Skyscrapers with Dan Spivey. So what happens is Cornette calls up Mark and said, hey, you know, there's an opportunity for you to be part of the Skyscrapers with Dan. Come down to WCW. He comes down to WCW, and it really wasn't working out. Ultimately, it just wasn't working out. Did he look the part? Sure, but it just really wasn't really meant to be. And another reason is that because WCW, they just really, there's a lot of foolishness going on with WCW. And during this time, a lot of people were not happy with, you know, money, contracts, and things like that. And Dan Spivey being one of them. So one night, they're going against Road Warriors. And, you know, huge legends in the business. And they're really popular at this time. So obviously they're going to, you know, take a L that night. And Dan Spivey was like, hell no, I'm not doing it. So he goes to Taker and say, hey, we're going out there tonight. Just follow my lead and just do whatever I do. Taker agrees, and he goes out there. But he doesn't really know what Dan has in mind prior to that match. So he doesn't really know that, you know, Dan has this agenda. He's mad about something, and he's just going out there putting his frustration out. So he just does what he's told. So things just don't work out with Skyscrapers or whatnot, and Dan was just basically out the door. He was just not feeling it. So, you know, then came the Mean Mark character, and so he was on his own, but things were just not falling into place with WCW. So renegotiations were coming up, and he was like, well, I kind of like it here. I'm getting some experience. I want to continue. And he's like, once it's time to renegotiate, I'm just going to ask for some more money, and everything's good. So when he does ask for more money, unfortunately, he's immediately turned down by Ollie Anderson. And he tells him that no one is going to pay money to see you, and that he should not be paying Mark any more money because of that. And when Mark says that, you can really see that even till that day, that affected him. Little things like that can just make someone say, you know what, fuck this, I don't want to do this anymore. He obviously continued, but that was really a big impact on him in his career, because he's like, man, I'm you know, putting myself out there, and this is what I want to do with my life. And for someone to say that, it really hurt him. And when he was talking about that, you can see that it's something that maybe probably still bothered him, because, you know, he's just a young dude trying to make it. Paul Heyman even said that he had a conversation with Ollie Anderson. He told him that that red-headed stepchild would never make it in this business. And to be completely honest with you, that type of remark is just actually a little uncalled for. I know it's a cutthroat business, but it's like, damn, like, do you have something personal against this guy that you would actually say those words? So ultimately, we already know that things are just not going to be working out in WCW, and he needed some new opportunities. And Paul Heyman was able to manage him in NWA, and also he was able to reunite with Dan Spivey with the Skyscrapers. That obviously did not work out. So Paul arranged a meeting with Vince McMahon. Vince McMahon, busy dude at the time, over here just snatching up territories here and there, so people know WWF was going to be something really, really big. And so Mark really wanted that opportunity, and just when he thought he was going to get that interview, Vince McMahon watches a match with Mark versus Sid, and he did not like it, so he's like, nah, I don't want to meet with him, so he cancels the meeting. But Paul gets him another opportunity to have a meeting, and Vince McMahon is like, 30 minutes, that's it, don't waste my time. And before that meeting, Paul's like, well, I had to get him to relax, so we went to get some drinks. And Mark ends up ripping his plans, and he had to sew him up himself right before the meeting, and he's nervous as hell because it just seems like everything is going wrong. So what was supposed to be a 30-minute meeting ended up being a 4-hour meeting. Vince actually just liked Mark as who he was. Wasn't really sure what they were going to do with him at the time, but he liked him as a person and wanted to sign him. So every day Mark is waiting for something to come up, and finally he gets a phone call from Vince, and Vince says, can I speak to the Undertaker? And Mark thought that was actually a cool name, and he was like, okay, well, yeah, and didn't know where this was going. But obviously it ends up being probably one of the best gimmicks in wrestling history. And what's interesting about this is that they showed sketches of the Undertaker, like how they wanted him to look with his costumes and things, and they just look so cool to see when you draw something and then it comes to life, and they look absolutely amazing looking at those sketches that they showed. So it was really, really cool. And he was called Kane the Undertaker. And then this is obviously important because later down the line, when Glenn Jacobs debuts as Kane, they took that name. So Vince McMahon decides to I guess one day, rather than saying Kane the Undertaker, he just says the Undertaker, and they just go with that. Obviously, we know he debuts at Survivor Series, so he's introduced by Ted DiBiase, but he comes out with Brother Love, and you know, he's supposed to be this heel, and people were just mesmerized. He was almost like scary. Like, it was just, for seeing this for the first time, it was very, very interesting as a fan to see what this was, and it was really, really cool. And you know, that was something that he was able to take with his whole career, was keeping that mysteriousness of the character throughout, I would say, well, pretty much majority of his career. So he mentions the first time he did the eye roll. I can't remember who his opponent was, but he was choking his opponent against the ring post, and his eyes rolled back. And that was caught on camera. That was the first time it ever happened. So when he goes to the back after that match, everybody's looking at him like, oh my God, that was scary but amazing. And they told him, keep doing that. Like, that adds to the character. Obviously, he was doing the pile driver, and before it was known as the tombstone pile driver, someone mentioned to him that it looked like he was dropping a tombstone, like how he does a pile driver, which obviously with another person. So they decided to call it the tombstone pile driver, which is really interesting. And he also talked about how, you know, he was always sticking his tongue out, and that he probably was influenced by Gene Simmons from Kiss, and which is also known for doing the same thing because he has like a really long tongue. So that's where he said he probably got that from. And he said it was interesting that his mom actually worked at a funeral home when he was a kid. So a lot of things in his life end up being somewhat of an aspect to his character, and that was pretty interesting. And his mom said she did not like the character at all. So Brother Love obviously had other things to do and could not manage the Undertaker anymore. They needed a new manager, and they end up interviewing Percy Pringle, who ultimately becomes Paul Bearer. And when he mentioned that he in real life is a licensed mortician, everybody was like, perfect, let's go with it. And it actually turned out to be like a match made in heaven. They could not have picked a more perfect person for the Undertaker. These two, perfect for each other. Loved it, loved it, loved it. Everyone obviously loved Paul Bearer's gimmick, and he was basically like himself, but like a turned up version. So it really, really worked out for both Undertaker and for William Moody. God rest his soul. He was just amazing at what he did. I would really like to see a documentary about him. Like, he seemed to have been a very prominent figure in pro wrestling even prior to joining WWE. So it would have been really, really cool to see a lot more about him. So they also talk about the Undertaker's mom coming to see him. His family came and sat in the front during a match with Sid Vicious, and Sid was trash talking and, you know, saying that she was beating her son's ass and everything, and she was so mad and just being really, really hated about the situation. And needless to say, that was her last time actually showing up. So, you know, it's 1997, and it just seems like Undertaker has gone through the whole damn roster, and they needed a really good opponent for him. And this is when they came up with a new challenger, which became King Kane. So it's Bad Blood 1997, and Kane debuts, and it was a really, really crazy moment because it was another mysterious character again, and it added even more to the Undertaker character as well. And you know, for years they carry on with that storylines of them being brothers and whatnot, and even though they were rivals, people loved to see them together later on down the line when, you know, they became Brothers of Destruction. And they were a really, really, really great team. And to be honest, like, they couldn't have picked a better person to be Glenn Jacobs. And yes, I believe Glenn Jacobs was Kane the entire time. They actually showed some footage of them showing Glenn how to be Kane before he was actually Kane. So that was really cool that they added to the biography. So it was really, really interesting. And there was an interesting part where Triple H says that, you know, fans like to send wrestlers, you know, gifts and things like that. And something that the Undertaker received a lot was vials of blood, and I thought that was actually creepy. Somebody like me who would probably think that is cool, yeah, that's actually creepy. Real life blood. So moving on, they start talking about Hell in the Cell, which is one of the most craziest moments that's ever happened in pro wrestling. Mick Foley was a bit what's that word, I guess, nervous with the match, because he felt like he could not top the match with the Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels. And them being in a cage, he's like, well, what should I do? And Terry Funk suggested that they'll be on top of the cage, start the match there. He kept telling Taker, let's start the match at the top of the cage, and Taker kept saying no. Obviously end up giving up, and they did that. And when Taker threw him down from that ring, that was just one of the most craziest moments to ever happen, because people thought that he could have literally been dead from that. And Taker was like, it was either him hitting the floor or him hitting the announce table, and the announce table was actually a better choice. As far as if he were to be injured, it would break his fall better, I guess. That's probably how he worded it. So during this match, I believe his ankle was broken, Taker's, and you can see if you watch that match back that he's limping a lot and whatnot. And Mick Foley, out of a 1 to 10, he was on a fucking 100, and Taker was just like, this gotta end. So at some point of that match, even Taker ends up asking Terry Funk, is Mick Foley even still alive? So we all know how that match ended up going. One of the most iconic moments in wrestling history. Absolutely insane. Taker goes on to say that he's had at least 17 to 18 surgeries of injuries related to pro wrestling. And wrestling was a huge part of his life, over 30 plus years in the business. He states that it was an issue with him and his kids, because he felt like he was not part of his older children's lives like he is with his younger children, since he's been retired and haven't been active. So although he's been able to provide financially, he was not able to be a dad, which is what he states, that he's now experiencing what it's really like to be a dad, since he is home a lot with his younger kids. And that it was important throughout his career to keep the mystery alive with the Undertaker, and that he didn't often do meet and greets, and he didn't really go out being Mark Calloway. He always tried to keep the Undertaker character alive no matter what he did, and that was very important for the character. And I think ultimately it did work out really well for the character, but I'm pretty sure there was times in his career where he just wanted to be himself, and he was really able to do that. When he returned during Judgment Day, and he was able to be more of Mark Calloway rather than the Undertaker character. Still the Undertaker, but like a different take on it. And they didn't really go much into like his other marriages prior to Michelle McCool. They did talk a bit about their relationship and how they met, and I guess they're really a great couple, and she's very supportive of his career, and it shows how supportive she was the day that he went to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. So it really seemed like a lot of things did end up working out for him as far as his career. Now, what he was sad about was the streak, and he stated that he didn't really take he didn't really acknowledge the streak until number 10. So once number 10 10-0 happened, then they really started putting out there about the streak, referring it to the streak. And every year everyone's just waiting to see him win, and it just seems like no matter what, he's going to win. He had really great opponents, but it just was like, it's the streak, nothing's going to happen. Then here comes Vince McMahon, WrestleMania 30, who decides that, what, definitely Brock is taking this. And while he was sad about it, he said he felt good about passing the torch to someone else. And honestly, millions of fans were not happy with that. I definitely was not happy about him losing. I remember having people over watching WrestleMania, and during that match, I'm gonna be honest with you, I was not paying attention, because I was like, he's gonna win, I ain't even worried. And then when I heard the bell ring, and I looked, and I was like, wait, Taker's laying down? What the hell? Yeah, very heartbroken moment for me. Needless to say, I did not watch the rest of that pay-per-view. Don't even know what happened, to be honest. But it was something that Vince McMahon felt like needed to be done, and it was done. And to be completely honest, I agree when Mark says that he could have retired with the streak, and that would have been just perfectly fine, and it didn't really seem like it was something really necessary to do. I think Brock Lesnar was pretty much established into that country. He was, I'm sorry, what did I say, country? He was very well established into the company, so it didn't really seem like something he really needed. But it is what it is, and I wish it was something that they did not do. But he was happy about that, and he moved on, and ultimately he had one of the best careers in the business. Like a lot of people would probably feel like they didn't get to do a lot of things that they want to do, but it seems like he accomplished a lot of things that he wanted to do, obviously coming from humble beginnings, and having one of the most awesome careers in the business. And I really did enjoy his Hall of Fame speech, and really interested to see what he's going to do from here on out. I did hear he's going to have a podcast, so it'll be amazing to hear his experiences and his take onto the business, and get to hear much more from him now that he doesn't have to, you know, really protect the Undertaker brand. He could just be himself now. And you know, that's what fans want. They really want for him to just be himself and let people know what it was like to be him and what his experiences were like in the business. So one of the things that he did end up seeing towards the end was how he really appreciated Vince McMahon and everything he's done for him, and that he was the most influential man in his life aside from his father. And you know, he owes a lot to Vince. So Vince McMahon is a crazy son of a bitch, but he has really given the world so many great moments, and it's just amazing to see everything that he was able to accomplish with this business and what he was able to do with Mark Calloway in his career. And I'm just interested to see where they go from here. It's going to be really great to see any other projects that Mark Calloway may have, and fans are definitely excited to see what's next. So next week is an episode about Goldberg, and I'm actually really interested in watching that, so I'll see if I review that too. Thanks for watching.